Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to show you step by step how to paint blessings, this winter beautiful landscape using lots of different colors. We're working on a 20 by 24 black primed canvas using blue and purple. I've got cerulean blue here, and I've got a large round chalk brush. You can use any large blending brush that you want. It doesn't have to be this one. And I'm going to squeeze the paint directly on my brush, that cerulean blue, and just start going around, starting the outside of the canvas, and I'm just going to go around and make it smaller and smaller as we get inside the canvas, adding more and more colors, but just blue for now. I just primed an older canvas with black paint, so you don't have to go out and purchase a black canvas. You can just cover it up with any black paint that you have. Make sure you dry it off first. Okay, so now that I have this size left in the center of the canvas, I'm going to switch to adding some purple and some white on my brush. I'm not even washing my brush off first. I want all these colors to kind of blend into one another. So I'll squeeze those out right on the brush, and I'm going to start going around partially on the blue first, working my way around, keeping that nice round shape. Well, it's kind of an oval shape right now, but we're working our way towards the center. That's going to be our sun, so it's going to get smaller and smaller and be a nice small circle. So working wet on wet, just painting the blue, the white into part of the blue, the purple and the white into part of the blue, so we get all those pretty tones all blending into one another, and the colors are going to just softly, gradually change into one another, kind of like a gradation of colors and tones that's very, very pretty and soft looking. Now I'm going to take a different brush, and this one's just a little bit smaller. I've got white on there again, and I've got some neon pink. Don't worry if you don't have any neon colors that I'm using today, just use the next brightest colors that you have. Any yellow, bright orange, pink will work. So just starting to blend that in the center, leaving that little area there just black for now that we're going to come over top of with our yellow next. And again, blending it partially into the color I previously added before, which is the purple and the white here. So I'm just going to soften slightly around the edges. And then we're going to come over with our neon yellow and white. So I like to add white to my neons to make them nice and soft. They make the most beautiful pastel shades. So I'm going to go start right over that pink, make it a little bit bigger. So we have a peachy tone that we've made now. And then in the center, I'm going to add more white and just a little bit of yellow. I've got a large mop brush that I'm using right now, and you can use any brush that you want for this. I just really like the roundness and the softness of mop brushes. And the leftover paint on my brush, I'm going to just start creating some soft little clouds here. Of course, the paint underneath is wet. I want that to be wet on purpose. I want to specifically pick up all these other colors that we've just applied and have them all kind of blend into one another, so we get all these pretty pastel tones in our clouds. So I'm just softening, doing little tiny scoops here, and then what I'm going to do is come in with my liner brush and add some highlights to the bottom parts of the clouds. We'll be creating little tiny scoops and some larger scoops, and then we'll create our sun rays. If your paint is drying too quickly for this, just add a little bit of water on your brush, or you might want to think about getting a slow drying medium that you can add to your acrylics. So here I've got my long liner brush. Of course, you can use any liner brush that you want. If you don't have a liner brush, you can use a filbert brush. Adding the white, pink, yellow to make a really light, soft color here that's going to show up. I want to add a very pretty highlight. So just little tiny scoops and wiggles here underneath the clouds where that sun's going to really be hitting. And this will create some shadows above, right? It'll kind of just look a little bit 3D. And then I'll continue to do this. So I'm making all different sizes, smaller as they're closer to the sun. And then as they get further away from the sun, we'll create more perspective. So we're going to make them larger scoops, as you can see here. So just lots of half circles, just think of it that way. And then we'll come in and add some pretty sun rays. And I'm going to add the sun rays over top of the wet paint because I want to create that kind of blurry effect as well, picking up some other colors that are still wet on the canvas. So I've got a filbert brush now, and this is Pro Stroke Power Krill. So I'm just going to start softening first before I begin my sun rays. And it's normal for the paint to be coming off in some areas, leaving the darker canvas and the blue exposed there. You kind of want that to happen so you have some 3D light and shadow happening to your clouds. So now I'm going to start pulling and flicking where I have those really light highlights. Load my brush up again with the yellow, pink, and white. Create some more scoops. So you can just do a combination of little scoops and then soft flicks. And if it's not flicking easily, then you might need a little bit of water on your brush. So you want to pull them in all directions, except we're not going to go straight down with them and we're not going to go straight out to the sides. So kind of just all across the top and diagonally pointing towards the corner of each side of the canvas. So I just have to pull my canvas out from underneath that little bar right now so I can reach and get to the top of my canvas. And then I'll place it back in there. I'm just going to continue adding a few more clouds and soft little sun rays in here, as well as adding a nice fresh coat of bright white in the center of my sun. Okay, now I'm going to start coming in with my little rolling hills that I'm going to be adding my trees to, and then a little cabin and a little church. I'm actually going to have a few little cottages or cabins or houses, whatever you want them to be, but not until the very end do I add that third little building. So I'm just going to add a few more little sun rays in here and soften. And my brush is pretty dry for this. I don't have a lot of paint on it. And just add a few more little soft scoops down around here. I'm going to soften these hills, adding some highlights here from the sun. And all the other colors that I'm not covering up are going to be the natural shadow colors that we're going to be using. So purples, like the pink with the blue together, make a really pretty purple color. Then we're going to have all sorts of colors throughout this painting. I'll be adding a little bit of turquoise a little bit later on as well. I find that all pastel shades look good together. You can't go wrong. And I'll just overlap these, sometimes adding a little bit more of my yellow and white. All right, I'm going to start my little house, my first little house here. So I'll start with a roof. Just simple basic lines here. The roof goes on a slant with a straight line across, and then a little square underneath the roof line for the front. I'll do a little triangle and a little square for my church, and then we'll have the steeple coming up. Later on, we'll add a little cross on there, keeping it very, very simple. These buildings are far away. We don't have to worry about too much detail. You just want to have some light and shadow and the basic shape that you want. You can make yours as ornate as you want. You can make your houses look however you want. I love to see your versions, by the way, that you guys are adding to the Facebook group. It's just so fun every day. I find myself constantly checking on there to see what you guys have come up with next. So make sure you guys don't forget to share this one to our private Facebook group. And I'm going to just add a few more sun rays in here, just make them really, really soft before I come in with my trees. And then I'm going to outline the roof line here for my church and just make it a little bit brighter now that I've got the shape that I want. Just that yellow and white that I'm using. And I'm going to paint in the roof first, a thin layer of this white and yellow. And then I'm going to come in with my pinky yellow white mixture. I want the colors to be, the highlights to be the same as what we've got going on in the sky. And the shadows will be the dark colors. Eventually I'm going to be coming in with some burnt sienna a little bit later on and adding some of that to give it a really warm, sort of an oaky, orangey, burnt sienna kind of a glow to the house, just to have a few earth tones in this painting. I talk about that a lot in my tutorials and videos. Here I've got some ultramarine blue and some sap green. You can use any green that you want, like a viridian green would even be nice. Hunter green, hooker's green, the sap green. So don't worry, if you don't have these exact colors that I'm using and brands, do not worry. Don't let that stop you guys from painting along with me today. I'm going to start adding the river here, smaller and narrower at further away, that's closer to the sun, and then bring it out wider towards us in the foreground. This really helps to draw the viewer in to your paintings. It helps invite whoever is looking at it in. It's just a really nice way to create perspective as well, and it's really easy to do this. I like to do this with all my landscapes. I like something to be larger in the foreground and smaller for the distance. I love perspective, and the more exaggerated the better. So just adding a combination of my blue and my green here, and I've got a little bit of white probably in my brush too, so I've got just some little subtle mid-tones going on, and I want it to look like the snow is puffy and round and has those like half circle shapes on the top. So I'll be pushing and twisting my brush around. You'll see how I do that a little bit later on. But while I have this dark color on my brush, I'm just going to add my dark base where I want my shadows to be and fall on this little house. I'm not going to do too much on the church. I want the church to be just a little bit brighter. And then I've got a little chimney going here. So we're going to have a little line in a slant, kind of diagonal at the base of the chimney for a shadow going across that roof. So just right there. And I'm not going to add the smoke coming out of the chimney till I'm done my trees. That way it's kind of in front of the trees, and it's because the trees are in the distance, so it wouldn't really make sense right now to paint the smoke yet. Okay, so with a clean brush, I'm picking up my warm sunset colors, and I'm going to come up and over, creating those half circle shapes, making it look like maybe snow-covered big rocks or just big lumps and hills of snow. I love this look. And then I'm going to start incorporating that into the hills on either side for some highlights, and start just lightly overlapping and creating different tones and highlights and colors all around this painting. I'll use these colors as well for the snow on the trees, the windows, all the light that's coming from inside our church and our little cabin. So yeah, I didn't know beforehand what I was going to paint today. I knew I wanted to do another winter landscape for you guys. If you guys have been watching and following me for a long time, you know how I work, that I'm mostly intuitive. So I have a lot of ideas in my mind. I see a lot of different images, and as soon as they come to me, I like to paint them right away, and I like to do it right on the spot while it's fresh in my mind, right in front of you guys. I always set the camera up just in case there's something that I think that I can turn into a tutorial for you guys. So this is one of them today. I think this might be my last one. This might be my last painting of 2020. We'll see. I've said that before in the past when I thought I was done for the year, but it all depends on how I'm feeling the next few days, if I want to take some more time off. But here I'm coming in with some snow-covered rocks. I love the way this looks down in the river or a creek. It's very pretty. I'm going to add the same colors, the warm colors, the pink, the yellow, hitting that snow, the beautiful highlights from the sun hitting the snow on those rocks. I'm going to lighten up some parts of the water. I want the water to look dark for the most part, that deep, rich, bluey green color, but I also want to have it looking kind of cold and almost like a little frosty in some areas. So I'll just use a few colors to do that. I'll be adding a little bit of white in there, and that's going to just naturally mix and pick up the blue and the green. And then later on, I'm going to add a little bit of turquoise. So you'll see how I kind of just cut in and around the rocks carefully. And acrylic paint is so forgiving, guys, that don't worry if you accidentally go over something you didn't mean to. You can dry it off and you can correct it and fix it right away. So here I'm going to start pulling and flicking in with my green, white, little bit of blue in my brush, just to create instant forest here. And then I didn't mean for that to happen, but the pink is right in there. So I like the way that looks. It ended up going on my brush and becoming part of the tree, that little hint of pink there. And as soon as that happened, I'm like, you know what? I really want these to be colorful trees. I was going to leave them mostly in silhouette and just have a couple towards closer to the sun, that we're going to have the highlights on them and more snow showing. But I decided I really wanted to make this painting look warm and comforting and soft and inviting, so I had fun with color, which I always do, but I really wanted to add a glow of all of these pretty colors to most of the trees. I'll keep a few of them darker. Now you'll see the color that I use later on towards the end of the video that I use for my shadow color. But this is a really good base color to start with because we do need that contrast. We do need that shadow underneath. So I'm just going to keep going here with my filbert brush. And I think this is a number 11 filbert brush. It's probably my largest one that I have. Like I said before, you guys have been asking which brush I'm using, and I couldn't remember what it was called, but this is the Pro Stroke Power Acrylic. It's a really good brand. I think I'm pretty sure I got a set of these as a gift from one of my patrons. Lisa, I think, I could be wrong, but I think it was from Lisa. So thanks, Lisa. I'm really loving these brushes. They're holding up nicely. You know how much I paint. I paint just about every day, so no bristles are falling out, and I'm definitely going to be getting more. Please let me know where you got these, and then I can possibly have a link and share that with all of you guys that are wanting to purchase these as well. Okay, so I'm going to keep adding some more trees in here, carefully adding them around the sides of the church, and behind they're going to be smaller and smaller and then get lighter and lighter in color and tone as they get smaller and further away and closer to the sun, where the more of the light's going to be hitting them. So I'm using a little bit less blue and picking up a little bit more white, adding that to my brush with a little bit of green. So yeah, I didn't really know exactly what I was going to paint. This is all just happening kind of just on the spot here as the ideas come to me. It's a really fun way to paint, and it's a great way to learn about your own creativity and kind of just take a break from looking at a photo to paint from. If you're, always thinking that you need a reference photo to go by, try changing it up once in a while. This is a really great way to grow as an artist and learn more about yourself and about what you've learned without having to look, right? It's like a little test without having to look at a reference photo. See what you've remembered and what techniques you've remembered and learned, as well as color mixing. And it's really a good idea to expand on your creativity, your imagination. All those things are going to make you a better artist, and it's just overall really healthy for your brain. It's a good thing for you to do. So try it sometime, guys. I challenge you to do that and share your versions on the Facebook group. I'd love to see them. So I'm adding some soft little waterfalls back here, making my trees lighter and lighter and smaller and smaller. Now you can switch over to a smaller brush if you want. I just really love this brush, so I want to keep using it as much as I can, but I will be changing my brush up and using a few other ones. We've used the liner brush, we've used the brush I used at the beginning again was a chalk paint brush, a round chalk paintbrush. Now that one was actually a gift as well from another patron of mine. You guys are spoiling me and giving me all these gifts. I feel so lucky to have such wonderful subscribers and patrons. Thanks, guys. Yeah, so just let me know where I can find them, where I can where other people can get them, because so many of you guys are asking, and I feel bad that I can't tell you exactly where to get them. I know that they, just from people telling me that they are sold through Amazon, some Walmarts. Depends if you are, it all depends what country you're into, right? Like in Canada, they're at Walmart, but not every single Walmart has them, as well as the paint departments like Home Depot or, Home Hardware, all those home improvement stores. They have the paint section there, and a lot of people like to use chalk paint, and that's in the paint department, so that's where you can find these brushes, but you're not guaranteed to find them in every one of those places that I mentioned, but hopefully you guys can find them. They're really fun to use. I don't think that they were meant for acrylic painting like how I'm using them, but you can see how well they cover the canvas, and they're great for blending and creating the round shapes in a landscape in the sky like I do. It's really nice to use. It just makes it a little bit easier than using a flat brush or one that's got a straight end to it. So I'm just coming over and adding more highlights and shadows and colors everywhere. I'm going to add a few little waterfalls in here. I think this looks really pretty. And then I'll be building up some more trees in and around those waterfalls. Here's burnt sienna, my neon yellow, neon pink, neon yellow, warm and cool. I've got both of those shades here. I've got my burnt sienna, turquoise, and I'm going to have a full list below this video. So yes, we are using quite a few colors today. Don't worry guys, I'm going to have everything listed below in the description for you, as well as the brushes. And here I'm going over the roof. Now you see how pretty that looks, just to have, instead of just straight white for your highlights for the snow, tint your white with some pretty pastel colors. So I just, it's easy to choose what you've already got in your sky. And then the darker parts of your sky are naturally going to be your shadow colors. So let that be a guide. Let that guide you into knowing what colors that you should use, and you really can't go wrong. Whatever colors you have in your sky, you use below. Like if you have, beachy kind of a sunset, you'll add those colors to the water below. So in this case, I'm leaving my water dark, but I'm choosing the big lumps of snow that are in the water to have the colors of the highlights that I've used in the sky. But you could add little flicks or flecks of those warm colors on part of your water as well. So I just took my burnt sienna, added a thin coat of that onto my little cabin here, and I'm taking my warm colors and dabbing those for the lights in the window and in the door. Okay, so with my liner brush, I'm adding some shadows in here. I'm using my ultramarine blue, maybe a little burnt sienna. You could take your burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, and your dark green that you're using, not the turquoise, to make a really dark shadow color for some contrast. So I'm doing that. I'm adding that to under my roof line, around the door, the windows, and a little bit more on my chimney. Right underneath the roof line here. This is just going to make your structure, your little house, look a little more 3D. It's all about adding those, the light and the shadow that really will make yours stand out. So with a clean brush, I'm going to take white, pink, yellow, and start adding some more highlights and color to my rocks here, the snow on the rocks. So I want to have quite a bit of paint on my brush to work with. Now the paint underneath is still pretty wet, so that's why I'm adding my paint really thick as well. But I really like the thick paint look. The longer I've been painting, the more paint I like to add to my paintings. I just think that it is nice to have a little bit of a texture once it dries, and it's also just really fun to use thick amounts of paint. I know not all of you guys can do that depending on what paint you're using, and I know paint is art supplies are expensive, especially now with what everyone's going through. So just whenever it's on sale, and Michael's has some really great sales. Every single time I go into Michael's, something is 60% off or 40% off. Lately it's been canvas, and here I'm just adding a little bit more of my white and my yellow and like my peachy pinky colors, but more white than those colors, just to have it, make sure that it's nice and bright once it dries. Acrylic paint dries a little bit darker, so keep that in mind. You might want to be a little bit more generous with your white just to make sure. Now I just wanted to do something kind of fun and whimsical here, so I'm taking my liner brush and I'm just outlining those trees just a little bit with my glowy light color that I used for my roof line. And I added a little bit of light at the base of the house under each window, as well as the front door. I really love the way that looks. I like to add a lot of life to fact, my houses, they've always got light inside. There's always somebody inside and life in those buildings. So I don't think I've ever painted a house that didn't have some light inside of the windows. And the church will do the same thing on the church. So I'll add some of those light colors for windows. Wherever you want to have windows in your church or your door, you're going to add a little bit of that. So the white, the yellow, the pink, any color to make a peachy tone is always a really safe color to use. You can be a little more generous with your orange if you want. In this case, I don't have any orange on my palette. I'm just using my pink and my yellows to make that orange color. But there's so many different ways you can make a light, pretty color for your inside of your houses. I'm just going to keep adding and adding some little highlights, snow to these little trees here, being really loose with my brush. So loose is kind of like messy, but it's far away and you don't see a lot of detail. It's more about the light and color balance. And then I'll be switching over to another brush to really start adding the beautiful colors of snow on all of these trees. But first I'm just going to do a little bit of this with my liner brush. I'm going to add a little bit more pink around here with my white. And then I'm going to start adding some of my turquoise. So yeah, I just want to add a few little lines in here, brushing very lightly with the pink. I like the way the pink looks once it's dried over top of part of that blue. It'll turn into a very pretty lilac-y color. So here, just mixing up those colors. I've sort of got a grayish kind of a tone just to add to my church. I'm not really sure yet. I'm going to play around with my church a little bit and I'll show you guys everything I do to build up the end result for that. Picking up some of my turquoise, I'm going to come in and around and kind of just wiggle, scumble my brush around. I don't want to cover up the entire river. I want to have all those other colors, shadows, and highlights in there as well. I'm going to add a little bit of hints of turquoise here to the side of the river on part of the snow. So maybe it looks like some shadows or some layers of ice built up that have that beautiful minty green look to them, that turquoise color. And then I'm going to add just a little bit of white to my brush, making a softer minty color. I'll add a bit of that down here as well. And then what I'm going to do is add a few little dabs of turquoise on either side of the windows on my house for the shutters and just for a little bit more color. Okay, so I think that's kind of fun just to add a little tiny hint of color there to the shutters and around the door. I've got my clean large filbert brush again, my number 11, and you can use any size filbert brush that you want, guys. You can even use a fan brush if you don't have a brush like this. I'm going to start coming in with my pretty snow, and this is my favorite part. I just love to paint trees and add pretty pastel colors to the snow. I think it just is really pretty, all those colors in the sky reflecting on the snow. So just tapping lightly, carefully, not covering up the entire tree. You want all those other colors that you got there. Now I thought it would be fun to even add a little bit of my turquoise with my white. I still got those other colors in my brush as well. I'm not washing my brush out, not yet anyways, and just making it look really frosty. And some of them are going to look like they have a lot of snow on them, and some of them will look like they just have some frost on them. So I'm changing it up, making everything a little bit different and random, so there's not, too much of a pattern going on. I don't want it to be really predictable. I want it to look, want there to be some little surprises here and there and keep it interesting. So I'm taking both of my greens now, my turquoise and my sap green, and I'll start coming over here, still have a little bit of white in my brush, create some fun different tones of green and frosty colors over here before I come in with my warm sunset colors. I'll add a little bit down below in the water as well. And then back over to my nice fun warm colors. We've got that pink, that yellow in there. Both of my yellows, I've got the cool yellow and the warm yellow, and a little bit of white just to make all of them into a pastel color. Now sometimes I'm going to be more generous like here and use some more of my pink. This is just so much fun to add a little bit more of a pop of color in a few areas. I might even add a little bit more than this later on, we'll have to see. I'm going to make the tops of my trees really pointy, and then I'm even going to exaggerate them a little bit, almost make them look like they're stretched out and exaggerated and kind of sweeping and swirling into the sky at the end, just to give this painting a bit of a whimsical feel to it. And then I'll just dry brush carefully over some more of that pink down on the hillside. Taking some more white, loading my brush up again with a little bit of pink and maybe a tiny bit of yellow. Let's start overlapping. Let's build up some more color here. I love this color so much. So this is the pink, white with just a tiny bit of neon yellow. I'm gonna go ahead and add and push down a little bit harder with my brush here because this tree is larger, and then the branches, of course, as they get down to the base, are gonna be bigger too. So that's when you wanna use more pressure and the full width of the brush. But when you're working on the smaller branches, you're just going to concentrate on putting pressure on the very tip of your brush. I just want to add a few more sun rays in here, and I'm purposely going around those other trees. I know that I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of that wet paint on there, but you know what? I like the way that looks. It's magical to make things kind of look like they're blurred and smeared into one another. If you do this carefully, don't be afraid to do it, guys. Be brave. It's so fun to do that and make certain things of your paintings look a little bit blurry. So I kind of like to do that with the tops of my trees sometimes. So right in here, I'm pulling and kind of just wiggling, scumbling side to side while I wiggle to really stretch out and exaggerate the treetops. And right in here, this is what I'm talking about, where I pick up just a little bit of that paint and make it look kind of blurry and like it's at one with the sun ray. I'm going to take a minute to dry part of this off, and at the same time I'm going to take my brush. You'll see in just a second here. I'll take my brush, and I was doing this while I was drying it, just tapping in a little bit more to bring that back in to focus, keeping those sun rays back there. Now here I'm just going to dry brush. That's why I wanted to dry this off here. I want this to look farther away and softer in tone. Remember that not everything in your painting should be the same amount of focus. You need to have something softer and blurrier, and some things that are going to be in full focus. So keep that in mind. That's going to make all the difference in your paintings. It makes a huge difference, and it took me a long time to learn that. But really, it's going to make a world of difference in your paintings. You're going to love that look, and it just sets everything in the distance. So that's just like a dry brush of whatever soft pastel color that you want. You can tint your whites with any color you want to do that. And I just used a little bit of white for mine. And now I'm coming over with another layer for my trees and adding, again, just a little bit more pink to my white sometimes, and then other times a little bit more of my yellow to make that peachy color. Adding a few more highlights here on the hillside that I'll do throughout the video. I'm gonna also go up to my sky now and add a few more little half circles and peaks for my clouds, and then another little layer of sun rays. This is optional. You definitely don't need to do it. I just really felt like I wanted to have a few more areas here that were a little bit brighter and stood out a little bit more. And then I'm gonna come in and add just a very, very faint suggestion of a mountain range back there, some Rocky Mountains. Because we've got waterfalls happening, and this river, it's got to come from somewhere, right? So I thought it might look pretty to just sneak in a few little mountaintops way back in the distance. highlights of snow with white, and then I'm going to take my light ultramarine blue. If you don't have this color, and I'm using this with a flat brush just for some shadows to make these look more like mountains and stand out. If you don't have light ultramarine blue, basically all it is ultramarine blue mixed with white, so you can do that. I really love this certain shade though, it's so gorgeous, and any excuse to use it I will. This is the golden acrylics brand. It's probably my favorite. As for whole bean, the neon colors, whole bean is my favorite. So if you guys are wondering what brand I'm using, it's whole bean luminous neon heavy bodied acrylics. You have to type all that in your search bar on Amazon, otherwise it won't come up. They can be really tricky to find. They don't sell them at Michael's. You can get them online though, and certain fine art stores sell them, but not everywhere has them. Now I choose the whole bean for my neons. They are expensive, but what I found is that they last a long time. So there's this thing about neon paints is that they tend to fade over time, the cheaper brands. So especially if you're selling your work, or just in general for any artwork, you don't want it to change and dull over time, do you? So it's called light fast. I think it's called light fastness. There's certain numbers on your tubes of paint for your neons and luminous paints. It'll say the number. On whole bean, I've got paintings from years ago with my whole bean paints, and they still look the same. And then I've had cheaper brands that I've used for like my kids' classes in the past, and they definitely have faded. So if you guys want something that's gonna last and that's extra beautiful to use, I mean, it's just a really good quality paint, and I'm not sponsored or anything by them. I don't make money off of the company. I just really love them, and I want to share my favorite stuff with you guys, so I really recommend that. Now here I'm coming in with more of my golden acrylics, light blue violet for my shadow, and I think this is one of my favorite parts of this painting. The trees, I definitely love the trees in this painting, and even more so when I decided to add this for those trees that are in more of a shadow, and they look like they're really covered with snow. So by the cabin there on the far left, I love those two trees so much. This is a really nice color to use for a shadow, and it's very complementary with a lot of other colors. It works well with peach, of course. Blue and peach, or purple and orange are complementary. So, and like I said at the beginning of this video, you can't go wrong when using pastel colors. You can use all pastel colors and they'll look wonderful together in a painting. So I'm just going to come and add a little bit of this for some shadows in and around my snow and my rocks in the water as well. Just adding little hints of it here and there wherever I want to soften some of my other shadows. So the base of the trees that we used is drying darker because acrylic paint just does. So I really don't want it to look black. I want this to have a very warm, like I said, warm, soft, cozy, soothing feel and vibe to it. And by softening some of the shadows in this, I'll be able to do that. I do want to keep, that being said, I do want to keep this rich feeling of the water, this intense feeling of the water, and I want to have some dark going on in it, but I didn't use any black. This is the darkest part of my painting is straight sap green with my ultramarine blue. And you guys might be wondering why I chose to paint this on a black canvas. What I like about painting on a black canvas is that everything you put, any layers of paint you put over top, we're always going to have a bit of a natural shadow. The black canvas creates that. It also helps to create great contrast, and colors show up really nice over black. And I feel like it's just one of those things that is kind of satisfying to paint on. Like a black canvas is satisfying to paint on. White canvas is too. But that's another thing that I recommend to you guys if you're just new to painting. And sometimes you guys get, you can get kind of bored and stuck and in a rut, and you just kind of don't know what to do. You need to change it up when you feel like that. So try painting your canvases a different color. They can be red, green, any color you want. Black is fun. And I guarantee You're going to get some more inspiration and motivation just by doing that. You've just got to change things up a little bit. So here I'm just going to work a little bit more on my church, adding a cross on the top. I'm adding more snow on the roof. So I'm just going to fine tune this church a little bit, not going too crazy with detail. I just want to get the light, shadow, and the shape just right, and the colors of the windows. So I'll be adding a little bit more of my yellow and my pink inside. Okay, so here I'm just adding some shadows around the windows and underneath the roof line. Then what I want to do is come in with some more of my pink and my yellow. I would just kind of want to bring the saturation up a little bit here. I will add a little bit of lighter, softer white with yellow after, maybe just to make sure that it doesn't dry looking too dark. And I'll just kind of go over the cross here, the steeple, and the roof line a little bit more. Just redefine this before I begin my next step. Now what I want to do is add a little bridge over the water, kind of right underneath the sun, way back in the distance, just so that it looks like we have a way of getting to the church and getting back home. And I think a bridge adds a lot of character to a painting. I just really like them, so I will be adding that in a little bit. I'll be using some white and a little bit of turquoise, and then I'm going to be adding a little tiny bit of a shadow with my burnt sienna right underneath the bridge. So you'll see me do that in just a moment. Once I get the top of the church just right, I have to take this off a little bit because, sorry guys, it's just really bugging me. But see, I don't want to take that out of the video. I want you guys to see that there's some things that I will kind of struggle in from time to time in my paintings, and I want you guys to see what I do, how I fix it and correct things, because that's all part of learning. You can learn how to paint something, but you need to learn how to fix something too that might not go right, and we all have those things that go wrong in our paintings. We're not perfect. So here I'm going to come in with a little bit more highlight for my windows and my house. I want to add that warm luminous yellow, just a very thin layer to make it look like the light is reflecting on the log house and give it more of an orangey glow. I'll do the same thing with the church, and then I just decided here I wanted to come in and add another little house tucked away, kind of nestled in behind this first one. And this just goes to show you that I really don't know ahead of time what I'm going to paint, because I would tell you guys to work from the background to the foreground. So this is also a really good way to learn how to add something to your painting that you never planned on, and it can be a little tricky to get it behind this house. So you just want to be really careful. I'm coming in with my burnt sienna first, a little bit of green on my brush just to make it a bit darker. And then I'm going to take, and I'm making this house smaller than the one that's in front of it, obviously, right, to help with the perspective. I'm taking turquoise with a little bit of white for the snow on the roof line. That's going to be a little bit more in shadow. And you could also use your light ultramarine blue with some white for your shadow on your roof if you want. And then I'm going to just take some of my pink and my yellow, go over part of the cabin, that burnt sienna with it to give it that nice warm glow as well. Add a little chimney here with a little shadow and some smoke. Then I'm going to kind of pull and swirl around, giving it a little bit of whimsy. Add a highlight to part of my roof. Now this side of the roof that's facing the other house is in shadow, so that's why I'm using the shadow colors. And the first roof on the first house that I did is facing the sun, so that side of course is going to be a different color. It's going to be those highlight warm pinky colors and peachy colors. So I'll just add a few lines of pastel colors in here so it didn't look like that second house I did was gonna fall off. So I just kind of extended my little slope and hill there. And then, like I mentioned earlier, just decided to add a little bridge here. So just a little arc or an arch for a bridge using some white and turquoise, and then just a little bit of burnt sienna underneath to make it look a little bit darker and stand out a little bit more. After adding just a little hint of another waterfall down in here with some turquoise and white, I'm going to go back to my river, add a few little wiggles and squiggles of turquoise and white, making some of those highlight areas stand out a little bit more. And I'll come back over to my house. I'm going to add some more burnt sienna in between these windows and in the front. My roof line, so right underneath, you want it to be nice and dark. I'm going to have that dark shadow there. We'll add a little door in here. And some more smoke and some snow on the side of the chimney, and more smoke coming and swirling up. A little bit more turquoise, just clean my roof up a little bit more here. Bring it down just possibly a little lower. A little bit of turquoise and white there. I'm going to add a few more hints of turquoise here and really exaggerate the top of my tree. I love that whimsical look. And I love the way this turquoise looks against this light blue violet. So again, if you don't have light blue violet like I used today by Golden Acrylics, you can use your ultramarine blue or cobalt blue mixed with titanium white. So as I finish up adding the last details of this painting, I want to thank you guys so much for joining me today. I hope you got inspired and learned a lot, and I hope you have a wonderful and magical Christmas with your family. I'll see you soon in another video. Bye, everybody.